I was just saying, I welcome everyone. I really share Christy's excitement that she just expressed. We're excited to see so many of you here that are so deeply committed to young people and to schools that support all students and sustain their cultures and affirm their identities. It's just really amazing to be here with all of you. My name is Morgan Craven. I'm the National Director of Policy, Advocacy, and Community Engagement at IDRA. Today, you're going to hear about IDRA's new resource hub, We All Belong, which we hope will provide educators, students, and families with resources to teach in culturally ways. So you'll hear from two amazing experts, Dr. Original innovative curriculum called America is Me. You'll also hear from some truly thoughtful student advocates from IDRA's Youth Advisory Board about the issues that they are facing in schools and how we can all support their work fighting for more just and inclusive classrooms. As Christy mentioned, I wanted to set the stage a little bit for this conversation and for the exploration of these tools. As all of you know, for the past few years, we have witnessed what is just the latest iteration of a long effort to challenge the legitimacy of our public school system and to silence, erase, and deny the identities, the cultural contributions, and the importance of Black, Latino, Asian, and Indigenous people, our LGBTQ+ community, and others. At this point, dozens of states and school districts across the country have proposed and passed policies that restrict speech, that punish thoughtful inquiry into the connections between our past and present, that really threaten the safety and well-being of children, that challenge academic freedom, and that whitewash really observable realities that so many of our students in our communities are facing. So despite these really horrifying efforts, I think it's really encouraging that so many of us are more determined than ever to keep up the fight for culturally sustaining schools and figure out how we can act to really promote the schools that we want to see for all young people. So again, we're excited to be with all of you in that fight and look forward to sharing the tools from our hub. We do ask for a favor tonight. There are several surveys that we have designed so that we can hear from teachers, families, and students about the topics and types of materials that would be most helpful to ensure those culturally sustaining classrooms that we want to see. We review those surveys and we use the answers to design and pull together the original curriculum and other resources, lessons plans, videos, media sources, and other materials for the hub. So I believe Christy is dropping links into the chat right now for all of you to fill out that survey. We would appreciate your feedback. It really does help us shape the hub and make it what is truly needed by educators and students and families. And if you are able to circulate any of those surveys to your networks, that would be incredibly helpful. So welcome again. Thank you all for the work that you are doing, the work that you will continue to do. We appreciate your work, your feedback, your thoughtfulness, and your time today. I believe I am passing it back to Christy to show you all the hub. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Morgan. And I will actually show y'all where the survey links are because we have multiple surveys for different groups, and that will help you know who to direct them to. And then we will have one that's specific to this webinar that we'll talk about in a little bit. So first, I just wanted to point to the IDRA.org website. That's IDRA's main website with resources within IDRA's, the unique ways that IDRA works that coalesces research, educational practice in schools, and policy and community advocacy, because it takes all three of those domains to have the maximum impact to strengthen public schools to serve diverse students today. So first, that is our website, but the one we will be featuring today is actually the School Resource Hub. It is on the home of this one. This is IDRA SEEN, S-E-E-N, the Southern Education Equity Network. That acronym SEEN is on purpose because it stands, it means for students should be seen in schools. And this site is designed to be a forum for focused advocacy and change. It provides information on issues and tools for building capacity in student community advocacy. So I wanted to just showcase one section here. I've got them preloaded so y'all don't have to wait on my Wi-Fi. So like, for example, this one on making change has resources like on how to meet with an elected official, how to testify, and things of that sort. There's more here about doing media interviews. We wanted to make this really user-friendly, particularly for new advocates, including students who may be doing this for the first time. On this site, you can register. You can see I'm already registered, and have access to additional features, including the groups. We have several groups already here, but you can start your own. You can set it as public or private to do any kind of organizing or information sharing that you choose related to the issues of this website. And as in all of IDRA's websites, we do have, let me go back to the page we were just on so you can see. We have the, well, I'm trying to show you the bottom here. We have, I promise, a button where you can translate. You can click to translate the content. There it is, right down there. It does an automatic Google Translate. I don't think y'all can see it on my shared screen. Anyway, believe me, it's on the bottom right button where you can make the site be translated to whatever language you choose that Google does. We also have the accessibility features for visual and hearing, for learning differences and things of that sort. So that tool is on the bottom right as well. And when you're logged in on the bottom left, there are notifications or notifications. So you can see if somebody has left a message for you or your group has posted something. There's a quick way to see that. I'm sorry, I can't have it on my screen, but it is there. So then we'll go to the hub. This is the newest part of the site, resource hub right here. Let me go to that page. We all belong. And it is focused on specifically on combating classroom censorship and teaching students in the current climate. And I'm going to show you the 4 main sections that we have here so you can see where the quick links are. And I'm going to actually go backwards to let you just see a highlight, and then we'll look at one in particular in more detail. First, we have advocacy news that includes video galleries of people testifying on this issue, and this continues to grow as testimony happens. In fact, we're editing some right now. Student testimony in the Texas State Board of Education meeting in July that we'll be adding here. Sometimes we had, it wasn't technically testimony, but there might be a press conference, but like we did a shadow hearing when testimony was cut off, and we had a lot of advocates who wanted to share their testimony in some way. So we created a Facebook Live event where people could do that. So those videos are there as well. Then we have a number of advocacy tools, some by IDRA, some not. That doesn't matter. It's where the good resources are, we want to point people to. And then we have advocacy news here in this section. And then looking specifically at policy updates, we have a landing page that is specific to classroom censorship. And I wanted to call attention to Knowledge is Power. That is an email alert that we send generally twice a month, or when something urgent is happening, that provides policy updates and educational practice news and advocacy alerts about the classroom censorship issue. And if you just sign up for our email list, this is one that you'll receive. Of course, then there's the website that we're looking at, and then specific news of things happening in Texas and Georgia. We have staff in both places, in both states, but we're also doing work, of course, across the U.S. South. So when we have other news, that's here too. And we are looking very closely at the chilling effect of these laws and proposals. There's a lot of misinformation and misunderstanding about what those laws require and what they don't. And so we are working really closely with advocates and with school leaders on dealing with that chilling effect. And then we have other news here. So those are the two of the sections there. Then I want to show you the teaching tools. So this is obviously designed for teachers. Oh, let me back up. Right here on several pages are the links to those surveys that Morgan mentioned. for educators, students, and then for families, we have it available in English and Spanish. And we would really appreciate encouraging other people to fill that out also. It informs the site. The information that is here is because of focus groups and surveys that we did earlier this year. And in teaching tools, one of the things we heard is teachers were looking for ways like understanding how to present a lesson or how to handle a certain conversation, and other kinds of resources. So you'll see a few here, like we have actually a observation tool that IDRA has used for a number of years. We point to some teaching tools like the textured teaching textbook or book has some really good information there and resources. And then we have things like these two examples, videos that can be integrated into a lesson. They're really good tools. They don't have a lesson plan with them, but we wanted to make them available so teachers can integrate it into lessons they already have. So that is the place, like the teaching tools section here. And then I'm going to the lesson plan page, which we will spend more time with. First, to let you know, because this section is growing, it will continue to grow, but there's already a number of, I don't know, 75 or something lessons on here. So you need to be able to search for what you want. You can always do a word search, but also if you wanted to look by classroom or school subject, you can do that. You can do it by topic. You can do it by grade level. Some of them are written for a range of grades, so you just click one of those and it'll get you there. And if you're looking particularly for a resource type, like video, slide deck, language, that kind of thing, then that's where you can search there. And then, of course, reset when you want to search again. We have a number of many curated lessons. So they weren't created by IDRA, but they're wonderful tools that were created somewhere else. And we want this to be like a starting place to help you find those. And so like, for example, let me look here. These two, we have a partnership with Unladylike 2020, which is a PBS series on women in history. It is not the usual women in history that you hear about. Each one has a video biography and lesson plans. Their website also has tools for holding a screening, discussion guides, and things of that sort. It's a really, really good resource. So we link to those. We don't have those on our website, of course, but we help you get to those and search. And it provides you the information here about the length of time, the grade level, that sort of thing. We have a number. Well, we have a number from there, but we have other sources also. So when you search, you can find those. And then we have a number that are original lessons. I have a list of them here that just make it really quick. If you hear the title of one and you just want to get to it fast, you can do that there. And we're going to look at a couple of those in depth right now. So I'm going to stop sharing here and introduce you to Dr. Marlon and Dr. Ferguson to take it from here.
All right, are we good to go?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, awesome. So good evening to all. It is truly a pleasure to share this space with you this evening. If you can hit the slideshow button, Dr. James, that'd be awesome. Appreciate that. So that is Dr. Marlon James, and I am Dr. Kelly Ferguson. Again, a pleasure to be here with you to talk more about the AIM framework. If you would kindly advance to the next screen. Awesome. So the America is Me, or the AIM framework, is a framework that provides educators with curricular resources to promote students' understanding of equity issues that are central to U.S. history and to contemporary society writ large. And it does so specifically with three key tenets that undergird it. Specifically, AIM cultivates this respect for human diversity, as well as fostering healthy intercultural relationships, as well as preparing leaders to reshape U.S. society. It does so through these five, what we call these five intercultural skills that Dr. James will expound upon in just a moment. But essentially, in a nutshell, these intercultural skills, they cross academic content areas and truly focus on doing what we espouse to do as educators, which is developing the whole child. So positioning students through this curriculum to develop personal maturation and professional success in the larger society.
Good evening. Dr. Ferguson did an excellent job of overviewing the intercultural skills. In essence, what she did not add was that sometimes we don't, as educators, it's difficult for us to perceive if we can teach for equity while still meeting and exceeding our content objectives. Intercultural skills allow for that to happen. It allows us to marry our content with the lives of students. It allows us to marry our lessons with their lives and experiences in their strengths as well. But we all know that America is at a tipping point in many ways, and it is this future generation that will promote the change necessary to bring about unity and harmony in America, but they need some intercultural skills to do that. So unity is one of those things that they need. So the AIM framework, you'll see a number of lessons. They always have content objectives, but then they also have intercultural skills. So if you want to promote unity, you find the lessons that promote unity. If you want to promote difference-making, social change, there are lessons that promote social change. You saw on the screen earlier a lesson on the Second Amendment called We Got Madison. That one is really designed to encourage kids to understand the challenges with the Second Amendment and how, as it is currently used, is promoting in some ways gun violence. And it gives them the opportunity, after exploring the Second Amendment, to rewrite their own Second Amendment. That's an example. Social emotional wellness, that is helping young people to improve their self-concept, because all these things that are happening in America is that they're not neutral to children. They're damaging their self-concept. And we want our kids to love themselves, because loving yourself is the only way to love other people. You have empathy, being able to put yourself in the shoes of other people. Empathy is the first step to advocacy. So if you can't relate to someone else, you really can't help them. And then lastly, everything is about communication, social, cultural exchanges. And AIM lessons are really centered on discussion, debate, case study, simulations, right? All of these very student-centered strategies, because we want kids to have more social skills and we want them to get along with each other, but we have to have teaching methodologies that allow for kids to have the classroom as a space where they can talk with each other and disagree in a respectful way, but seek understanding. So these are the 5 intercultural skills associated with any AIM lesson. Here's an example. This lesson is called The Real World, The Difference Education Makes. This is, we have a version for middle school, which I just presented at schools out in Houston, and then we have a version for high school. Here are your objectives. You can pull math standards, you can pull language standards, you can probably even pull science standards if you're doing something like the scientific methodology, or if you're doing something like statistical interpretation. All of these, any type of objective at any grade level can be used if you infuse intercultural skills with content. Teaching strategy is called a simulation. Is going to put kids into a fictitious situation and then ask them to use real academic skills to solve real world problems. In this particular scenario, we really want them to understand the difference that education makes. This is how we went about it. You'll also see that every AIM lesson has discussion questions. It will also have small group reflections questions. Some will have critical thinking questions. And lessons are done we have some early childhood lessons, and then we have high school lessons. But here's the real world simulation. Basically, what we ask kids to do here is we give them a budget. In that budget, they can shop at Whole Foods, which is really expensive. And then they can shop at a mom and pop grocery stores where the food is not very good, but is cheaper and more affordable. They can get their dream home, or they can stay in public housing. They can take public transportation, or they can buy the latest SUV, right? But they have all of these life choices that they have to make. But what they don't know is that we give each of them a weekly income, which means that, for example, here at $619 a week, you can't afford to do everything on this sheet with only $619 a week. So they don't know each group is getting a different set of numbers, weekly income, and they don't really know where we're getting that income from. But they have to make decisions about what kind of food they'll eat, what kind of housing will they live in. And we know housing in America has ramifications for the quality of education that kids receive in that neighborhood. So as you get cheaper housing, your schools have less money, which means that they have less resources, right? And then they have to figure out entertainment, all those things, and then they have a certain amount left over. But then what we also do is we give them a life happens cards, like, okay, your car breaks down, so now you have to budget that money into your account. This is great for kids because, one, they always ask, when am I going to ever use this math? Or when am I going to ever use this lesson? They can use this lesson, and it helps them to understand what it's like to be a young adult and the type of life choices they make. What they come to see in this lesson is that, what they come to see in this lesson is that we pull weekly incomes for different racial groups and different genders. For example, Latinas who have a high school education, they make a particular amount per week. Same thing with every racial group and gender group. And what they'll slowly start seeing is that there is a racial gap in income, regardless of education, and there's a gender gap in income, regardless of education. But what they will also see is that regardless of your race or regardless of your gender, the more education you have, the more income you generate, which means that your life chances and life choices also increase. So this is a good example of a lesson that we use both for middle school and high school. High school is a little bit more complicated than this one. I'll turn it over now to Dr. Ferguson for another example.
All right, awesome. So then we have an elementary lesson plan example. This comes from the series entitled Say Her Name. So this series focuses on prominent women of color. 3 we have so far. So we have Michelle Obama, we have the Honorable Sonia Sotomayor, as well as Malala Yousafzai. This particular lesson focuses on Michelle Obama. What you will notice is that for each of the AIM lesson plans, you will see the specific intercultural skill that ties directly, it names specifically what the intercultural skill is, and then specifically how it ties and is infused into the actual lesson. So this particular intercultural skill is that of social emotional wellness, where students are understanding why they matter and what makes them unique, how their difference makes them unique. So for this particular lesson, students are focusing in on a text. If you can see at the very bottom of the page there where it says resources, the text, all of the texts are vetted by Dr. James and myself, and specifically, as Christy mentioned earlier, it's as a result of the number of focus groups that were conducted with classroom teachers to say, classroom teachers were saying, hey, we want more media. We want more examples of actual texts that we can use to engage in these conversations around equity. So you'll see these texts in there. This particular one is entitled Michelle Obama, First Lady Going Higher. And the a macro level focus on this lesson is where students are learning, understanding about the important experiences that shaped the life of the first African-American First Lady, of the United States, and understanding more about Mrs. Obama's commitment to service, her commitment to education, and how she inspires children to be healthy. And the story, the lesson concludes again with them completing this poem or short story about why they matter. Something that you'll notice across all of the lessons that tie specifically to a text, you will see these check for understanding question guides. All of these questions are developmentally appropriate and are just generally developmentally appropriate for whatever grade level. And this is also coming from someone who was a classroom teacher for many years, but these will be questions that can be asked before reading, during reading, and after reading as well. Some of these activities can be done. We've designed them. You got it there. Thanks. But these learning experiences can be completed. We give suggested time periods for these, but also knowing that you have the professional expertise to know that, hey, this might work better, or we might want to modify this and put these in learning centers as opposed to whole group. So we defer to you, but we give a recommendation for about how long we anticipate the lessons might take. So in this particular instance, you're looking at two learning exercises. One that ties in, focuses on developing students' vocab by pulling a specific targeted vocab from the text. And then you'll also see a word puzzle. What is not listed here, but what is also included in all of the AIM lessons are answer guides as well. So you don't have to go fishing through, fumbling through, completing things, but you will find those answer keys for your convenience. And then in this particular lesson, there was a third learning exercise, a writing activity, because students always need to write more. And in this particular instance, all of these assignments are tied specifically to that text to make these experiences meaningful, authentic as well, but tied to the text, and specifically have students delve into what makes them unique and why they matter. Again, these can be done, completed whole group, small group, or in learning centers, but we do give recommendations, and you'll see through each of the lesson plans, standard lesson plan components like objectives, state standards, and so on and so forth, to be a helpful guide to you.
That is the AIM framework. Again, our goal here is not to provide a prescription for teachers, because I believe that when lesson planning is so prescribed that it deprofessionalizes teachers, we provide you with a recipe that is extremely flexible, that will allow you then to add your own flavor into your lessons. But the goal here is to really give teachers a set of tools and a framework where they can learn to develop their own lessons within. And what you'll notice with the AIM framework also is you'll see different levels. Level 1 are for lessons that last for about a day. Level 2, they tend to last 2 to 3 days. And then level 3, they can last for 5 days. But there's a lot of flexibility in terms of how you use the content. It's really just designed to help teachers grow their expertise in equity pedagogy. So we thank you for your time, and we definitely thank IDRA for their support in allowing us to come up with and develop these lessons, and we appreciate their partnership. We turn it back to you, Christy.
Thanks so much. I did put direct links to those two lessons in the chat. And also I put a link to a feedback form and interest form if y'all would fill that out after the webinar. Before we go to our student, I wanted to see first if there's any questions about the lessons or the hub that you might have. Feel free to drop them in the chat or raise your hand, and we can answer questions first, and then we have one more person for you. Very special guest.
I have a quick question.
Yes.
Dr. Marlon, would you be able to, you use some language for, you just mentioned it, in designed to help teachers develop expertise with what kind of pedagogy you said?
Equity pedagogy.
Okay, Thank you.
Great, great. All right, Thomas Marshall, will you introduce yourself and our special guest?
Absolutely. Hello, everyone. My name is Thomas Marshall. I use he, him pronouns. I am the policy communication strategist here at IDRA. And I also have the privilege and honor of working with our youth here at IDRA. Just recently, we came out with a youth advisory board, which we have 10 student leaders from all across Texas that are focusing on educational equity and learning about the policies and research. They're also building a student network with other groups of young advocates, as well as helping us out with social media to engage community members and really just engaging us on what youth need in their schools right now. And so I really have the great privilege to work with them every Friday, along with some other co-facilitators here at IDRA, to talk about some of these issues that are happening, as well as give some presentations and hear from various speakers each week. Today, you will hear from Kennedy Moore. She is one of the students that works with us, and I'm really excited to be able to talk to, that she'll be able to talk to you about some of the things about why we really need these histories and need these lessons that are so, so important. I also want to build out that IDRA, amidst the classroom censorship debate, has really had the chance to be strategic and center youth voices a part of the work that we do. It's super important that a lot of these things are happening, that we're listening and cluing in to what youth really need. And so I'm really excited for you all to hear from Kennedy today. And I will go ahead and introduce her and read her bio very quickly. Kennedy is a junior high school student in Frisco, Texas. She enjoys watching classic Black and white shows such as the Andy Griffith Show, studying classical music, and co-leading her school chapter of Diversifying Our Narrative. She's inspired by the efforts of her grandparents to fight racism. Kennedy has found interest in educational equity issues, specifically involving equitable teaching practices in history and English classrooms. As a Youth Advisory Board member, she hopes to learn more about the interworking of government systems and how she can contribute to addressing issues and making changes to the Texas legislature. So without further ado, I will introduce you all to Kennedy Moore, and you can take the floor, Kennedy.
Hi, I'm so glad to be here today. Thank you. This is an amazing conversation. I love talking about classroom censorship. Just to start off, I know that personally throughout my entire education, especially here in Texas, the standards of what is necessary to be taught kind of still remains unclear, even though we have our TEKS in place. One of the main things that I see as an issue because of this censorship is the weariness that it leads and puts on our teachers on what they're allowed to be teaching us. I know that personally, as of last year, my history teacher was fearful and unsure on what she was allowed to teach and how she was able to do it. And she decided to go ahead and just only encourage talk about MLK Jr. And this was a really big thing for me because MLK is a great, amazing, influential Black figure, and not only just for the Black community, but for the entire civil rights movement and those to come after him. I feel like it's not even just simply about MLK, but there are tons of other minority individuals that have made history and are consistently pushed aside because their story doesn't fit the narrative of what is digestible or appealing, which honestly just goes to show that these censorship laws that we are having put in place are not really bettering education, but are hindering it. As Thomas says, I lead a coalition of students at my school, and I've always been a strong advocate of how important it is to have many stories and many perspectives provided to students. I think that when we start having this discussion about diverse education, that we must emphasize that it isn't narrowed to one singular agenda that we're providing to students, but it's all encompassing. And I mean, perspectives of like the Eurocentric perspective, Asian, Hispanic, Indigenous, Black, all perspectives from one event and looking on all sides, because that equips students to invoke agency on their parts to go in and make their own opinion. It's not just one focus from one person at one time. With that being said, that's why I feel so strongly about the Research Hub, because I was looking through it and there are some amazing things on there. And it's not just because there's a lot of topics, but they're not contemporary. One of the greatest things about the Research Hub is that we all know that teachers have very stressful lives and they have 100+ students at one time and doing meticulous work such as making lesson plans and looking looking for resources to provide to the students and then having to grade the work, it's not always feasible and it can get really hectic. But for students and teachers, teachers specifically, if they're really trying to step in those roles of like restorative justice, the Research Hub is an asset for them to use because there is tangible resources out there for them to have these plans that amplify BIPOC stories, trend-setting women, and financial literacy, which can break generational chains that are on families by teaching you on how to live a stable financial lifestyle. That's why personally, I feel as if that all of this conversation that we're having today is a great step in the right direction. I know for students that look like me, being able to see stories in our classrooms of people that look like me that have the same history as me, it makes me feel acknowledged and recognized and seen, and that makes all the difference. So those are my ideas. I think if you're a teacher on here, this is an amazing step in the right direction and you should run for it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kennedy. Thank you for being here. I know that this is a very busy week for you, and I really appreciate you joining us and speaking your heart. Let me see if I'm going to see if there's any other questions or comments that anyone would like to share. I'm going to put the link again to the feedback survey and let you know that one thing we're asking is if you might be interested in being part of a new community of practice, either focused on advocacy on this issue or for teachers trying out testing some of these lessons, sharing your own learnings about teaching in this climate, just like I said, community of practice, if that's something that you might be interested in, if you'll just put that in the survey too. But it's real quick, just follow-up survey for today's webinar, which we will also provide online. As you saw, we're recording. So feel free to share it with your colleagues and let other people know about the hub. And we will continue to add lessons as time goes on, both curated and we're developing new original lessons also. Let me hand over to Morgan.
Thank you so much. One thing that I really loved about this session is that so many parts of this important work were touched on. Kennedy, amazing comments, amazing work that you're doing, being a young advocate, changing what your school looks like currently and what schools look like for so many students to come, focusing on what all of this looks like in the classroom, focusing on how we take what we're learning in the classroom and turning it into advocacy. I think so many of the challenges that we're facing now require this multi-pronged strategy. And so it's just really cool to see all of us in one room working on that. Dr. James, I see you coming off mute. Did you want to add something?
Everything is free on the hub.
Oh, what an important note. Thank you. Everything is free on the hub. Share the hub. It is supposed to be out in the world for anyone and everyone to utilize. So please make sure that you are sharing it with your networks and emphasizing that, yes, it is free. The resources are available to everyone. I know Christy posed the question. If there are any questions from anyone, please, or any things that you would like to share from the work that you're doing, please feel free to come off mute to do that or put it into the chat. Again, we have relinked to the survey, both the survey for this webinar, and please feel free to take and share the surveys that help us shape the materials that are available on the hub. That's very, very important to us. And yes, just want to make space if anybody would like to come off mute to share anything, to ask any questions, to give any feedback. Happy to hear it now. And if not, thank you all again for your work, for your focus on these issues, for your time at the end of, I was about to say a Thursday, but it is definitely a Wednesday. We just appreciate you all so much. I can speak for myself. Wednesday, yes, Dr. Ferguson. I can speak for myself, and I'm sure a few others were happy to stay on for a few more minutes if anybody has any questions about the hub or wants to share anything more offline. And if not, thank you all so much. It was lovely to see you here.
I have a question, if it's okay.
Great.
So I'm actually not a teacher. I am a peer mediation coordinator with Bexar County. And I was just wondering if there's any resources available on the hub specifically to conflict resolution and how we can promote dialogue about, accepting differences, coming to I guess better understanding of people's differences and things like that.
I'm only coming off mute, not to answer your question, but to stare at Dr. James, Dr. Ferguson, Sarah, and Christy, who can point to. Yeah,
Sarah unmuted, so she's ready to answer
I
this.
did. Hi, Holly. We do not have anything right now on conflict resolution, but that is a great area that we could try to find some information or develop our own material to add. It's a good suggestion.
I would also add on our IDRA EAC South, that is IDRA operates the Equity Assistance Center that serves 11 states in the U.S. South and DC for schools and school districts, state education agencies on protected areas, including race, equity, national origin, gender, and religion equity. And there are resources on that website, particularly about using restorative practices. So I'm thinking that might be a really good place for you to look. So Morgan put the URL there, and then we could also see about following up with you to see what else we might have or where we could direct you to.
Sounds good. Thank you.
And Holly, please check back with the hub because the information continues to accumulate over time. I know, I think Dr. Ferguson and I, we have our last few lessons that we're working on. One is on, overcoming the use of racial slurs. One is on the history, is understanding cultural differences, right? So it will give you a lot of good information about what is culture, because a lot of people just don't know. And then the last lesson is going to be about the history of scientific racism in America and how we were taught to think this way so that we can undo those thinkings. But we appreciate any input that you all provide us, because the hub is a living vehicle and it's not static. So any input you provide goes right into the lesson creation process. So thank you.
Hi, my name is Jared Fields. I am the Director of Education Equity for the Social Justice Learning Institute in Houston, Texas. I run a high school program called the Urban Scholars. And Kennedy, thank you so much for your presentation. I have a question for you, if you can stick around. What I'd like to know, you had an opportunity to talk to, at least it sounds like your history teacher. I'm interested in hearing your thoughts on any conversations that you've had with other students, right? Students who may not have been sort of in the mind that you were in terms of talking to history teachers or other teachers to find out what constraints they felt from classroom censorship. So just tell me and what sort of some of those students were concerned as you are.
I would say that for my peers, they're not as they weren't really paying attention as much as I was, which, I mean, most kids my age aren't, but that's no fault to them or anything like that. I do know that those that were part of the coalition that I'm part of, that we talked about it and we discussed it. And that was kind of starting the reason why I looked more into classroom censorship, because I didn't know as much as I do now, but it has a really strong effect that we don't even realize, because we just continue on with like our school lives. We don't really think about like, oh, this one lesson, like what is the ripple effects because of it? Like, where does this lead to? Where does this branch off into? So with having those students that are wanting to be advocates, that's a area that should be addressed as well. Like, analyze your situation, actively like think in the moment, like, shouldn't we be learning about this? I mean, it's history at the end of the day, no matter what side people push, or like say if it's an agenda or whatnot.
Can I add, only because I've heard Kennedy and her fellow board members talk about this, what I think is so interesting to—
Thank you.
Can you hear me? What I was saying, what I think is so interesting to hear you all talk about is just how this was showing up even before we had a name for classroom censorship policies, right? Things that you all were encountering in your classroom that were making kids feel targeted because of their race, because they identified as members of the LGBTQ community, and this has really heightened that. So I think it's so interesting to always hear you all talk about like what, you know, the things that you all were experiencing every day that maybe we now have a different name for, but that you have been experiencing for a long time, that this curriculum also helps to address. So I've always thought that was so interesting that y'all shared that. And Jared, I know that you reached out to Thomas in the chat, but I think it's great I would love to learn more in the future about the young people that you work with, and maybe connect with the symposium that Thomas and Kennedy mentioned.
Thank y'all so much for joining us, and please keep giving us feedback, and let us know other ideas you have of what we should be adding to the hub. We very much welcome that. Y'all have a good evening.
Thanks, everyone.